U.S. Supreme Court declines to hear challenge to anti-BDS law. California jails consider standards for religious garb. Turkey-Syria earthquake death toll crosses 49,000. Indian government body refuses to consider Muslim dynasties as Indian. UK trade chief reveals rift with US over green subsidies. New Interfaith Center houses UAE's first synagogue. From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight, the U.S. Supreme Court on Tuesday declined to hear a challenge to an Arkansas law that punishes those who support BDS. BDS is the Palestinian-led boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. It challenges Israeli crimes in Palestine, including occupation and apartheid, through economic censure of Israeli-produced or affiliated goods and services. The Arkansas law imposes a 20% penalty on state contractors if they refuse an oath not to support BDS. The ACLU petitioned the Supreme Court to hear the case on behalf of Arkansas Times editor Alan Leverett. The paper does not boycott Israel, but refused to sign the oath. Leverett responded to the decision by saying that the Supreme Court can ignore our First Amendment rights, but we will continue to vigorously exercise them. The Freedom of the Press Foundation also tweeted in response to the move that SCOTUS should have stood up for the First Amendment. Instead, it let a ruling stand permitting the government to withhold ads from newspapers that won't pledge to not boycott Israel. Palestinian-American Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib tweeted as well. She said that the struggle for collective liberation requires global solidarity and economic pressure. Today's decision is a travesty, but the people will not be silenced. Seattle made history on Tuesday by becoming the first city in the U.S. to ban caste discrimination. In a 6-1 vote, Seattle City Council elected to add caste as a protected category under the city's anti-discrimination laws. Councilmember Kshama Sawant introduced the ordinance earlier this year. Caste is a hierarchical color scheme stemming from Hinduism in India. At the top of the system are the Brahmins, known as the priestly caste. At the lowest end are Dalits, who are deemed untouchables. Low-caste Indians and non-Hindu Indians have faced discrimination within workplaces in the United States by high-caste Indians. Last year, an appellate court allowed the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing to pursue a lawsuit against Cisco Systems. A high-caste Indian American engineer at the tech giant allegedly denied professional opportunities to another Indian American employee of low-caste background. Brandeis University banned caste-based discrimination and harassment in 2019. In 2022, the University of California State School System, the largest in the country, added caste to its discrimination protection policies. Supporters compared the system to apartheid and slavery, according to Seattle Times. Many of the Dalit or caste-oppressed individuals who spoke in favor of the ordinance withheld some or all of their names in public comment out of fear of retaliation from current employers. The Hindu American Foundation campaigned against the resolution. It said the addition of caste to the non-discrimination policy violates the very policies it now amends. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, announced on Tuesday that rail operator Norfolk Southern Corporation must pay for the cleanup for chemical spills. On February 3rd, a train carrying hazardous materials derailed in the village of East Palestine, Ohio, which was operated by Norfolk Southern. The EPA's sweeping enforcement against Norfolk Southern will lead to major penalties if the company does not comply with and complete all of the EPA's mandates. The company already faces multiple class action arguments from East Palestine residents, hundreds of whom were forced to evacuate their homes for nearly 2 weeks. The Ohio State Attorney General's office has said it is also planning to take legal action against Norfolk Southern. Former U.S. President Donald Trump claimed on Tuesday that the State Department under the Obama administration backed the 2014 uprisings in Ukraine. Speaking in a video, he said that World War III has never been closer than it is right now. He vowed to clean house of all the warmongers and America's last globalists. The February 2014 Maidan Revolution in Ukraine led to then-President Viktor Yanukovych fleeing the country and a pro-Western government coming to power. Trump reiterated that he was the only president in generations who did not start a war. California jails are considering enacting uniform standards for religious clothing. Proposed legislation SB 309 would govern religious grooming and headwear throughout California's detention facilities. That includes those run by private contractors. The bill would also create guidelines for conducting security searches in private areas. It was introduced by State Senator David Cortez this month and has gained support from faith and civil rights groups. These include the California chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations and the Theba Foundation, a nonprofit that works with families impacted by incarceration. An update on the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria after the break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. The death toll from the February 6 earthquakes and aftershocks that hit Turkey and Syria this month has crossed 49,000. Turkey's disaster management agency said it has recorded over 7,200 aftershocks since the initial quake. These leave many survivors in the quake-hit region worried. But some dispute the numbers, saying it is an undercount. Those include a Turkish doctor and volunteer with disaster relief named Galal, who told the Daily Beast this week that the government numbers don't make sense. He said there must be 30,000 dead in the city of Iskenderun alone. And in Turkey's Hatay province, which was hit with more earthquakes this week, people say the disaster will have claimed 200,000 victims throughout Turkey and Syria once it is totaled up. As many as 17 potential unmarked graves have been found using ground-penetrating radar at the former Alberni Indian Residential School on Vancouver Island. The announcement was made by the Tseshaht First Nation Tuesday at a press conference. Only 10% of the more than 700 acres of the area has been covered, and more could be found as the search proceeds. Children from more than 100 First Nations in British Columbia were forced to attend the school, which operated from 1900 to 1973. Earlier research found that at least 67 children died at the school, but Tseshaht First Nation elected Chief Councillor Ken Watts said in a statement the figure could be higher. The number of children who attended the school during its almost 75-year history was not available. The Indian Council of Historical Research under the country's education ministry does not consider the nation's Muslim dynasties part of India. In a new exhibit titled Glory of Medieval India, Manifestation of the Unexplored Indian Dynasties 8th to 18th Centuries, Muslims and their Mughal dynasty are excluded. The group's secretary Umesh Ashok Kadam said he didn't consider Muslim dynasties as Indian dynasties. He was responding to a question on why Muslim dynasties like Bahmani and Adil Shahi were not part of the display. Professor Kadam told India Today that those people came from the Middle East and didn't have direct connection with Indian culture. He said Islam and Christianity came to India during the medieval period and uprooted civilization and destroyed the knowledge system. Minister of State for Education Rajkumar Ranjan Singh, who inaugurated the exhibition, said Prime Minister Narendra Modi has asked ministers to remove colonial hangover. The exhibition features 50 dynasties from all corners of the country, including Cholas and Yadavas, among others. After nearly 4 decades, the Daily Dinkal of Bangladesh has been shut down by the government. This was after a judge upheld an order by the Bangladeshi government to shut down the newspaper, considered the voice of the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Hundreds of journalists in the country protested the order, deeming it an attack on freedom of expression and freedom of the press. Several journalist organizations in the capital, Dhaka, also staged rallies Monday near the National Press Club. Speaking to Andalu agency, Shamsur Rahman Shimal Biswas, the newspaper's managing editor, said the ban is the latest in a series of acts by the government to suppress freedom of the press and silence opposition voices. He said the government has already shut down more than 200 popular online news portals since it came to power. Biswas also said the newspaper's 1,500 employees have now lost their jobs amid a global economic crisis. Bangladesh ranked 162nd in the World Press Freedom Index 2022, prepared by Reporters Without Borders, below Russia and Afghanistan. The United Arab Emirates has opened an interfaith center housing a mosque, church, and the country's first official synagogue. The UAE, which normalized relations with Israel in 2020, is home to a small but active Jewish community that usually prays in private. With 3 houses of worship in the same place, the Abrahamic Family House, inaugurated on Thursday in the capital Abu Dhabi, is the first of its kind. The center will be a platform for learning and dialogue, a model of coexistence, said its president, Mohammed Khalifa al-Mubarak. Visitors are invited to participate in religious services, guided tours, celebrations, and opportunities to explore faith, he said in a statement released on Friday. The UAE was the first Gulf country to normalize ties with Israel and only the 3rd Arab nation to do so after Egypt and Jordan. A senior Pakistani delegation visited Afghanistan's capital Kabul this week for talks with Taliban officials. The Taliban recently reopened a key border crossing with Pakistan after 4 days of closure. In recent weeks, Pakistan has tightened border controls due to security concerns as the country faces a dramatic surge in violence. This is after the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, also known as the Pakistani Taliban, ended a months-long ceasefire with Pakistan's government. That had been negotiated by the Afghan Taliban. The delegation included Pakistani Defense Minister Khwaja Asif, Lieutenant General Nadeem Anjum, and the Director General of Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence Agency. The three met with Afghanistan's acting Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar. In a statement, Baradar said political and security concerns should not affect business or economic matters. On Tuesday, the UK's trade chief Kemi Badenoch warned that President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act won't help the U.S. counter the rise of China. At an event by Politico, she called the federal law protectionist. Badenoch warned it could create a single point of failure in key supply chains and predicted it would not achieve its aims. Her comments came right after the U.S. ambassador to the UK mounted a spirited defense of the act at the event. The Inflation Reduction Act offers billions in subsidies and tax credits to encourage taking up electric vehicles and building green infrastructure. But the law's promise of massive help for U.S. firms has European and British auto manufacturers concerned about the impact on their own industries. Badenoch argued that many countries are looking at what the U.S. is doing with concern. Thank you. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.